I'm Babla Jonathan, and this is the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Équinoxe Television, live from our headquarters in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. In our top stories in this edition of the news, the government of the Republic of Cameroon responds to stiff criticism on the management of COVID-19 funds. Criticisms had been rising from all quarters, with suspicions of mismanagement, embezzlement, and corruption as far as COVID-19 funds are concerned. In the Republic of Cameroon, we shall also be bringing to you updates on the COVID-19 situation of the Republic of Cameroon, and we will also talk about the failure to put an end to the crisis in Mali. The West African mediators have not been able to strike a deal to bring to table an agreement on the way out of the crisis in the Republic of Mali. 5 West African heads of states were there yesterday. The functioning of interurban and urban transport agencies in the Republic of Cameroon has been brought to question after the incident that occurred at a transport agency here in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala, where a gendarme officer was killed and another seriously wounded. And this is an issue that is now making headline news in the Republic of Cameroon, and passengers of interurban transport agencies are complaining over the functioning of those agencies, notably the aspect of the availability of services. Some services are not supposed to be paid for according to the passengers, but the request for 100 francs CFA is often generating a conflict between some of the passengers and leading to death, like what happened at the Équinoxe Transport Agency in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. Immaculate For we talked to some passengers of interurban transport agencies in Douala and compiled this report.
The recent killing of a gendarme officer at the Équinoxe traveling agency in Douche Aqua Douala, following a dispute concerning the payment of a toilet fee, has sparked a wave of reactions on whether passengers of traveling agencies should have to pay toilet fee in order to have access to the toilets. It is unfair to pay for a ticket and you're unable to use the restroom freely. It is the responsibility of the enterprise to provide such facilities for its passengers. They have the obligation to look for a restroom attendant to take care of the toilets.
C'est comme si j'entrais dans un restaurant, dans une buvette.
Restaurants and bars do not charge toilet fee. Why should traveling agencies be different? I have paid for my ticket, so I have the right to use the toilet. I think this incident will serve as a lesson to other traveling agencies. I hope the government will look into the matter.
L'État devait vraiment sévir cet agent de voyage parce que,
while condemning the violent act, some other passengers believe that paying toilet fee is normal.
Pour moi, c'est normal pour l'entretien des toilettes.
The amount paid as toilet fee is meant to facilitate the cleaning of the toilet. By the way, the problem was not the toilet, but the lack of coins. If we had coins in Cameroon, we would not have been facing this problem. We are just experiencing some of the negative consequences of coin scarcity. If the toilet is abandoned, it would always look messy.
Dans le pays, c'est pour ça qu'on en souffre. Tout le monde en souffre.
Some passengers also decry repeated loss of their luggages each time they travel with interurban transport agencies in Cameroon.
Now we're going to take you to the northwest region of the Republic of Cameroon, notably to the Santa municipality. And there, our correspondent Mbu Stella took interest in the poor state of a health center in that part of the country and the difficulties that those working there, the health personnel working there, and the patients who come there face almost on daily basis. And she was there at a time when the hospital hospital or the health amenity was receiving aid from the government of the Republic of Cameroon. And she's also going to be taking us in the report coming up next to the Bamenda prison, the Bamenda Central Prison. Details in this report.
This is a ward at Ndapang Integrated Health Center in the Santa Health District. Many are sick, but the space and hospital beds are limited.
You see that money, they inside that place. You know, supposed to be inside open. You see, so you know, look at this place. Or put someone so. Like, we're supposed to get men's ward differently. At one time, we put even female. You see, so this is men's ward. But now, they are female inside mixed with the men because lack of accommodation. These people are sitting here. They don't supposed to be in a waiting room, but now they are taking their treatment here. First of all, this is a ward. See how crowded it is. In this our environment of coronavirus. See how patients are joining beds.
There are two patients in the ward.
At the time the world is battling the spread of the coronavirus pandemic, not even the frontline health workers at the hospital are protected. As of July 20th, 2020, the Northwest region had recorded 646 cases, 399 recoveries, and 63 deaths as a result of the coronavirus. These figures are on the increase with limited isolation space, beds and ventilators. Concerned at the rate of contamination, the Northwest Chief Executive, Adolphe Lilafake, has taken to the streets of Bamenda, visiting institutions and ensuring the fight against the spread of the pandemic is on all fronts.
We have a zone to make a screening of patients, and you have all the materials about washing hand and screening of temperature. If you have a suspect case, you have another site on my left here to make a test. And when you have a case, a positive case, any positive case, you don't have to manage them in this site. You have to bring them in the military hospital at my tree. So this is a juvenile school, the primary school.
One of Bamenda's most crowded institutions, the Bamenda Central Prison, has had no case as of July 23, 2020. The governor, during a stop, encouraged the prison staff. He handed a package of 1 million francs CFA to encourage the local production of protective gadgets.
I would like to extend to you our congratulations and your collaborators and the inmates for what you are doing to preserve public health in this prison.
Earlier on, the governor had prescribed the doubling of efforts to limit the spread. He was speaking during a ceremony to distribute gifts worth over 500 million francs CFA from the head of state, President Paul Biya, to health districts in the Northwest region.
The government of the Republic of Cameroon responds to criticisms with regards to the management of COVID-19 funds. Some politicians and civil society leaders had suspected mismanagement, corruption, and embezzlement of money meant for the fight against coronavirus in the Republic of Cameroon. And the Minister of Public Health, Dr. Manauda Malachi, speaking to the press today in the nation's political capital, Yaoundé, said everything is done in a transparent manner. He said that the country has already spent more than 20 billion francs CFA in the fight against coronavirus, and he indicated that as of now, the country's coronavirus curve is on a standstill, is stable, an indication that the government is succeeding in its fight against the coronavirus, and the country has recorded so far more than 16,500 persons who have been tested positive for coronavirus, and more than 14,000 have been successfully treated. And the Minister of Public Health, Dr. Manauda Malachi, however, called on all Cameroonians to continue in the fight against coronavirus, to continue respecting all the anti-coronavirus measures of government and the sanitation rules of the World Health Organization, because the pandemic has not yet been defeated. In the meantime, stiff criticisms have been rising from all quarters against the government with regards to the management of the coronavirus funds in the country. And this is why the Prime Minister, Chief Dr. Joseph John Gute, has instructed, has demanded for an audit that would be carried out in the management of the coronavirus funds in the country. Innocent as the reports.
Government's announcements and clarification through the Ministry of Public Health. It has already used 22 billion francs CFA in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, has triggered different reactions on social media. SDF MP Jean-Michel Ninche has highlighted alarming embezzlement by government through its exorbitant purchase of COVID-19 materials. In a release, he spoke of government officials using the pandemic as their farms to fatten themselves, while the already poor Cameroonians continue to suffer from their unscrupulous acts. Joel Mafong, a Cameroonian, says he now sees what Honorable Jean-Michel Ninche was saying. Another citizen questions how much Cameroonians of goodwill contributed into the National Solidarity Fund. John Kum says the Minister of Public Health is even humble and kind to clarify the public opinion on his expenditure. He asks how many ministers have clarified Cameroonians on their expenditures. Criticisms, he says, should be avoided against Dr. Manauda Malachi. Pablo Dibala terms the pandemic and funds collection as a scam. Some laugh tirelessly and say it is not surprising to hear this from governments of Cameroon. Njinkeng David writes, leaders of no conscience, God have mercy, the innocent will perish. Elande Epi comments, I see nothing wrong with that. I only see everything wrong with those who cannot stand up for their rights. Bless Billion says, I knew it is not for nothing that they are converting corpses from road accidents to COVID-19 corpses. According to Dr. Manauda Malachi on state media, all COVID-19 expenses were made respecting procurement procedures, which were then introduced to the Ministry of Finance for disbursement of the 22 billion francs CFA managed in transparency. Despite the minister's clarification, criticisms kept arising, prompting the Prime Minister to announce on Thursday, July 23rd, an audit of the funds to fight against COVID-19. The audit, he indicates, will be carried out by the Account Chamber of the Supreme Court. The head of government concluded that there will be total transparency around the management of the National Solidarity Fund.
Civil society leaders, politicians, and other Cameroonians are decrying what they qualify as police brutality. And of course, a case in point in this newscast is a township taxi driver who was allegedly tortured to death by the police, and the family members of the township taxi driver accusing the police to have caused his death. For me, Armstrong Standard reports.
The shocking image is the lifeless body of a township taxi driver in Douala, Mitterrand Chuten, who died Thursday at the Nkululung Health Center. He was hospitalized following an illness he developed while in detention at the Seat Police District in the city of Douala. According to his companion and his uncle, he suffered exaggerated corporal punishment in detention.
He told me that they arrested him and got him well beaten. I asked him why he was being brutally beaten, as if he was a thief.
I asked if the officers checked his document to know if he was a clandestine driver. They just arrested him, got him well beaten, and asked him to pay the sum of 100,000 francs CFA, and that the proprietor of his vehicle will also have to pay the sum of 50,000 francs CFA before he is released. Since the money was not paid, they kept him in detention, very sick, When his situation became critical, he was brought to the hospital and chained. I think that when somebody is arrested, he should be questioned, and if it becomes serious, he should be taken to the court. All began on Monday, July the 20th, 2020, when he was arrested for having wrongly stationed his vehicle in a public space in Douala. The deceased brother, himself a police commissioner in Yaoundé, said the treatment meted on their brother was disproportionate.
J'ai insisté à rencontrer le commissaire.
I insisted to see the commissioner so he could acknowledge the errors that led to his death. According to his declaration, my brother was arrested thanks to the intervention of 2 elements of the Amok Tank Battalion who blocked him from escaping and got him well beaten. He died from the wounds sustained after their beatings.
Ils l'ont battu. Je dis, c'est des coups mortels dans tous les cas. Il est décédé de ses blessures.
The family in tears says the police was well informed of his deteriorating health situation, but they choose to give a deaf ear. He would have been saved on that day, family members insist.
I said, Chief, he is sick. He has typhoid. Please give my husband, let me take him home. He can die here. I brought him new dresses, but I have forgotten his pants. But the officer said, typhoid is not an illness.
At the Seat Police District to get their version of the story, the men in uniform refused to talk to us. A similar atmosphere at Dinkululung Health Center, where our effort to get the exact circumstances that led to his demise were fruitless.
Coming up, our Northwest correspondent Mbu Stella takes a look at efforts to disenclave Fundong, a municipality with several underdevelopment challenges. The movement of persons in and out of that part of the Northwest region has been very difficult. Her report.
3-year-old Rainatu Salamatu has been sick. She and her family live along the Isaibandia Road in the Fundong municipality. The communities were linked by footpaths.
If you there like bush, man, if you know, if clock even house go this side, only na for food.
If say sick man come up for compare with the car for head with the worker.
The 7-kilometer stretch of road has been a nightmare to farmers in particular.
First time where you will be the take on from the road here, bike be the struggle for your own way when at 5,000. Many of we people don't throw our farms them because of the difficulties for go walk and then transport them.
This is the present state of the road. It is being realized thanks to a convention signed between the Fundong Council and the Ministry of the Economy, Planning and Regional Development. Work is being carried out by the inhabitants of the area using local tools like hoes, cutlasses, diggers and spades. At the site, no one is giving up yet despite repeated attacks by gunmen believed to be the separatist fighters.
First week we enter for the job. I be work at least 3 weeks. Inside the work, I'd already put 2 pig there.
Last month, the project they make my picking for us at West with fever. So we as it enter, if nobody did road, I not forget 10,000 for take from Bingo Hospital.
3 months into the 6-month project, worth over 300 million francs CFA, Denise Awondang, mayor of Fundong, visits the road and evaluates the work done so far.
Yeah, this project was to alleviate the sufferings of those who are working in the area that is being opened. You see that the population is suffering, whether in crisis or out of crisis. The first phase was the bush clearing and the general opening of the roads right to the end. That work has been done, and we're tackling the bridge now. We think that if the next phase comes, we will build all the hydraulic structures that are involved, and we are also going to laterite all the bad spots that we have seen on the road.
It is often said that where a road passes, development follows. The smiles on these faces is a translation of the joy within, an indication there is hope life will be better when the road is completed.
The mayor of the municipality of Buea, southwest region of Cameroon, David Mafani Namange, is now striving to pay a debt of 1.2 billion francs CFA, which he says he inherited from his predecessor, Lady Kema Patrick Esunge, and he's calling on business persons in the municipality to fulfill their tax obligations in order to help the council out of the troubled waters. He was speaking during the ordinary session of council. Derek Jato reports.
Mayor David Mafani Namange, the present mayor of this imposing Buea council, says he came and inherited a council which was in a financial bad shape, with 1.2 billion as debt.
You know, administration is a continuation. So as concerns the council debt, we are negotiating with taxation, and we hope in the days ahead the debt will drastically reduce as per taxation department. FECOM we have to pay, so we have started paying. Concerning, salary arrears is equally debt. I've told you people that as at this morning we have already paid 6 months. And then Hizakam, just last 2 weeks, we paid 20 million francs. So you see, we are servicing our debts.
The mayor also reminded his Buea population that they are in the same boat and to successfully sail out of these troubled waters as a team, administrative tolerance must give room for civic responsibility.
What do I mean? Economic operators too should come in and start paying taxes, because you cannot expect a clean Buea and you don't pay your taxes, and we can't pay Hizaka.
Still on this economic page, the Buea Council has cancelled all contracts involving third parties in the municipality.
As per advertisement, thoroughfare, management of motor park and some other contracts, we came to realize that those are the major areas where the council can raise finances, and virtually nothing is trickling in from them.
Councillor Ekome Nilmbela, Vice Chairperson of the Economic, Local Development, Town Planning and Housing Committee, gave the new directives on how economic operators in Buea should engage with the Buea Council.
Avoid going through third parties or meeting people in the council. Channel your worry or your demand directly to the Lord Mayor of the Buea Council, or write, and your correspondence is going to be attended to.
The senior divisional officer.
During its first ordinary session, devoted for the examination and the adoption of the 2.5 billion 2019-2020 administrative, management and storage accounts of the Buea Council, Mayor David Mafani Namange called on his collaborators not to relent, for there is success on the horizon.
Out of Cameroon, state schools in South Africa will close for 4 weeks from Monday as part of measures to combat a surge in the number of persons tested positive for the coronavirus. And older students in primary and secondary schools return to school on the 6th of July 2020. And President Cyril Ramaphosa said the current academic year will be extended beyond the end of 2020 as a result of the disruptions caused by the pandemic. And the president also announced a $30 billion package to fund health services and help those in greatest need. And coming up, we talk about the situation in Mali. The West African heads of states, 5 of them who traveled to Mali yesterday, failed to reach a deal to end the crisis in that country. Inosenaze has more.
The leaders of Ghana, Ivory Coast, Niger, Nigeria and Senegal on Thursday headed to Bamako to meet Malian President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta and key figures of an opposition protest movement that has been demanding for weeks his resignation. After the day-long talks aimed at breaking the deadlock, Nigerian President Muhammadu Idrisu said the West African Regional Bloc, ECOWAS, will have a visual meeting on Monday to discuss a crisis that could further destabilize a country at the heart of the fight against armed groups in the Sahel. Mobilized by influential Muslim leader Ibrahim Diko under the umbrella of the June 5th movement, a desperate alliance of political, social and civil society leaders, tens of thousands of people have in recent weeks poured onto the streets of Bamako to demand Keita's resignation. Although dissatisfied over the country's economic woes, corruption and worsening security situation, the protests turned violent earlier this month when 3 days of clashes between security forces and protesters left 11 people dead. Several opposition leaders were also briefly detained. An ECOWAS mission last week led by Goodluck Jonathan, former Nigerian president, proposed setting up a government of national unity that will include members of the opposition and civil society groups. It also suggested, among others, the appointment of new judges to the Constitutional Court, which had already been de facto dissolved by Keita in a bid to calm the unrest. But the proposals were rejected by the June 5th movement, with protest leaders insisting that Keita must go and calling for accountability of the killings in the June 10-12 protests.
Manjik and Gabriel ending the first part of this newscast. Talking Point is up next. Thanks for staying with us in Talking Points. Our guest today, Christelle Bain-Foy, is joining us from London, United Kingdom. She is a women's rights advocate and anti-gender-based violence crusader, executive director of the Hope for the Needy Foundation. Hofna, thanks for joining us today, Christelle.
Thank you very much, Babila, and thanks for having me here today.
All right, we're going to be talking about gender-based violence, the violation of the rights of women and girls in the Republic of Cameroon. You have been crusading against the violation of the rights of women and girls in the country. What is the situation as of now?
We all research has shown that in times of any emergency, gender-based violence always takes an opportunity to increase in different forms. So in the situation of Cameroon, especially in the conflict-affected Northwest and Southwest regions, the conflict paves way for more issues of gender-based violence to continue to affect women and girls. And with the pandemic, like the COVID-19, the situation has even just gotten severe. So we have a situation where the United Nations Women, where UN Women calls gender-based violence a pandemic. So having a having a violent conflict, a situation of a violent conflict, and a situation of COVID-19. So we are actually living in a state of double pandemics. So the situation is increasing.
How frequent are the
issues of child early and forced marriages are on the rise? Intimate partner abuse, domestic violence, child trafficking. I don't know if I mentioned child early and forced marriages. So the situation, these are things that we're normally dealing with before the crisis got into where it is beginning 2017. The crisis and COVID-19 has just made the situation more severe for women and girls, especially those in rural communities.
From your findings, how frequent are the rights of women and girls violated in other parts of the country? In a short while, we're going to focus on the situation in the Northwest and Southwest regions of the country to talk about gender-based violence within the context of a conflict like the armed conflict in the Northwest and Southwest regions. But away from those two regions, how frequent are the rights of women and girls violated in other parts of the country?
I will not limit it to the other parts of the country. I will try to situate the situation from a global perspective. A research carried out by, I've gone through research done by UN Women and other organizations that champion women's rights, like the Canadian Partnerships for Women and Children's Health, indicates that 70% of women who have experienced physical or sexual violence in their lives are being those forms of violence come from their intimate partners. But an estimated 35% of mothers worldwide, like the number of women who have been killed, 35% of women killed worldwide have been killed by their intimate partners. So we even have a recent situation of including 2 Cameroonians in the United States, where an intimate, there was this intimate partner killing another. That's just one of the many cases that are going on in our early and forced marriages, where UNICEF presents that over 25 million child marriages were prevented in the last decade. And if action is not taken, by 2030, over 150 million girls would have been given into marriage before they get to the age of 18. So it's a common thing where we have over 650 million women and girls living in marriage today who were sent into marriage before they were 18. So given our works in the communities in Cameroon, because our activities have not only been limited to the Northwest and Southwest regions, we've had numerous cases of this child early and forced marriages, some of which we've tried to intervene. We'll have cases of child trafficking, where children are taken from girls in particular are taken from one community and to neighboring parts of the country, especially in Yaoundé and Douala, where they go to serve as house helps and end up as sex workers and everything. And the crisis to sending some of them to those different parts, and not talking about the issues of the far north region, that such situations are blended with issues of poverty, economic dependence, where other parents give our children in marriage as a way to make income for themselves. So the situation is mixed up. It is true that our statistics may not be clear. That is why one of the things my organization is engaging in the near future is getting proper statistics on gender-based violence in the country, because most of the activities either go unreported or unattended to.
How much does culture play in the gender-based violence experienced by women and girls in the country? We know that in the far north region, for example, there are cultural practices there that have some negative impact on women, as well as in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, for example.
Yes, well, that's one of the things that has continued to sustain violence against women and girls. The very strong patriarchal values we have. We have the issues of those cultural issues, and those rules, customs, and traditions that continue to see women as people for whom decisions should be made, people who cannot make decisions even about their own bodies. Like, the women are continuously being seen as subjects. So it cuts beyond tradition, culture, perceptions, mindsets, a lot of bad faith, and that continue to make the seed of inequality to grow. So sometimes I can even also link it to the state, for example, not institutionalizing issues of gender equality. So so it's a multifaceted kind of a thing where we have different actors playing different roles that continue to come together to sustain violence against women and girls. So that is why for us at HOFNA, we believe that addressing gender-based violence does not only mean challenging those cultural norms, harmful cultural norms and practices that hold women behind. It also entails transforming mindsets and promoting the understanding, like promoting gender equality or equality of people, and building capacities of people to respond to these cases, and also challenging situations where cases of gender-based violence are normalized. Because we have situations where these cases are looked upon like a normal part of growing up. So one of the things we do at HOFNA is raise awareness about these forms of gender-based violence. For example, in those days, one could tend to think that it was normal for your body to be touched unwanted. But we now transform mindsets of the next generation of female leaders to tell them that you have control over your body and you shouldn't allow people to touch, because Even today, we still see cases of children being raped, and it is growing. So it also starts with the mindset. Children should be on the alert, and the people who have those minds should trying to touch the human parts of it, to build mindsets about our own actions and inactions and how they affect other people. So our approach is always multifaceted. That takes into context all the approaches and the scenarios on the ground.
All right, you mentioned the particular nature of our society in Cameroon. Is the violence against women and girls coming only from the men?
Sorry, I didn't get you.
Are you getting me, Christelle?
Yeah, yes, I can hear.
All right, I said you mentioned the patriarchal nature of our society, where men have the upper hand, or women are almost relegated to the background. But is the violence against women and children coming only from the men?
From the name?
From the men.
Oh no, violence. The first thing I want to situate here is gender-based violence affects men as well. It is just that it is more prominent with women, because we have women who beat up their men as well. But it's heavier on the side of women. It is not, this gender-based violence is not perpetrated only by men. It is perpetrated by systems that support patriarchy, systems that support inequality. Both men and women are capable of leading such systems. For example, in cases of widowhood rights, where we have situations where a widow is forced to sleep on bed on cemented floor in the cold and stuff in the name of mourning the death of the husband. Such systems are reinforced not by men, they are reinforced most often by other women. So the patriarchy we are talking about is not men. Patriarchy is a system that continues to sustain domination and the relegation of a particular sex, of particular people, their needs, their priorities and concerns, and giving more attention to other people.
All right. Now, there is an issue concerning one of the practices which violate the rights of women. I'm talking about female genital mutilation. How much of this is still being practiced in parts of the Republic of Cameroon today?
It is true that it is being practiced in some parts of Cameroon, but where Hofna has mainly been working on, especially in the northwest and southwest region, that is not a very common happening. But I have other organizations that have been working around that in the far north region, including Association Rayon de Soleil and others. But with a lot of sensitization going on now, it is being, that particular aspect is gaining more, it's being greatly reduced compared to other parts, other forms of GBV, like rape, that is actually on the rise in different parts of the country. We have issues of rape, issues of intimate partner violence, and the child early and forced marriages that are increasingly being on the rise. So female genital mutilation, for example, is practiced in particular parts of the country. It's not common around the entire nation. But there's other forms of this GBV that are everyday part, that form an everyday part of the realities of women and girls.
All right, now let's focus on the crisis situation in the northwest and southwest regions of the Republic of Cameroon. We know that there are hundreds of thousands of women and children, including girl children, who have been displaced by the crisis. Some are in the bushes in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. Others are internally displaced persons seeking refuge in other francophone parts of the country. Some are refugees in neighboring Nigeria. How bad is the situation of gender-based violence in this context of an armed conflict?
Okay. Like I mentioned to you, GBV increases in times of emergency, whether it is an economic crisis, a violent conflict, or a health pandemic. So in such cases, first, we have issues where girls have, where education, in the context of the crisis, education was brought to a halt. Imagine a context where parents used to prefer to send their girls to marriage instead of sending them to school. So just when we're working, and because we've had workshops with traditional rulers and traditional title holders trying to transform the culture or trying to encourage girls' education, just when this was still ongoing, we now had a situation where children were supposed to be were kept out of school. So that alone, I still have the picture of this 12-year-old I ran into in a village in Dongamantung division. She was in primary 6. She was supposed to be continuing her education, but at 12 years old, she was pregnant, heavily pregnant. Her mom had abandoned this child with the grandmother, and the mom was into prostitution in Douala. And the grandmother was crying to me, asking me what would she do when she doesn't even have money to feed herself? How would she take care of this 12-year-old who is pregnant? Okay, that's the story of just one of the 12 years old who've gotten pregnant because they have been kept out of school. There are many other girls who have been forced into marriage unwanted because their parents needed to use them as a source of income. Just like we have many others who have been exploited and taken to other parts of the country to serve as house helps, where money is being paid directly to their parents, and they end up there not knowing what the future holds for them. In the internally displaced camps, I've had opportunities to interact with people from there, serving people through our humanitarian activities, where we've had situations of rape continuing there. We have situations of the growing needs and the lack of access to basic services that also prevent those people in the bushes from living a life worthy of human beings, especially the women and the girls, given that they have special needs. And of those people displaced both internally and around the country are women and children. So you can imagine so to think that these were people who depended on livestock and agriculture for a source of living, and they have been taken away from this comfort because of a crisis they did not bargain for. Imagine the economic stress they are going through, and the exploitation that can come in case of a woman who is that vulnerable, both economically and living alone in the bush, So the situation has really been aggravated by the conflict, and women are living in continuous needs, and women and girls are really struggling to survive with the realities that the violent conflict has put on them. But just before we're even about to understand how we could make our way with the violent conflict, the pandemic came, and women, those who were even thinking that they were home, were now forced to stay home with those who abuse them on a daily basis. And they have been cut from the pandemic, and the shutdown measures that were put even in the country prevented them from having access to family members who could help them. That is why in the course of that, Hofner started what we call our national initiatives to end violence against women and girls.
I was going to ask you, Christelle, I was going to ask you, as a women's rights advocate, what have you been doing to mitigate the impact of all what you're describing on women and girls in the two Anglophone regions of Cameroon?
We started addressing these issues in 2015. We had workshops across in the communities in the Northwest region with traditional rulers and traditional title holders to challenge toxic masculinities, to talk about those cultures that continue to inflict pain on women and girls, that continue to support violence against women and girls. And I still remember the fun of Kungi, who after our program established what he called a community network in his village to ensure that every child that is taken from his village to go as house help or go out of his village has there's a follow-up mechanism to be sure of where this child is going to and what the child is being taken out of the village to address the culture that supports violence against women. We've also had workshops with bike riders and saloon owners and barbers. There we understand that issues of child trafficking are mostly discussed and can easily be identified by bike riders or taxi drivers and saloon owners. And this to us was an approach to ensure that reporting cases of gender-based violence in the communities were reported. So these were activities that were sponsored by the U.S. Embassy in Yaoundé. In 2015, we started an initiative we called Creative Arts for Girls Empowerment. The Creative Arts for Girls Empowerment in 2015 was to use debate, drama, music to raise awareness about child early and forced marriages and the importance of girls' education. The program also supported us to train 300 teachers as teacher counselors, parents as community counselors, and students as peer educators in some seven schools in the northwest region of Cameroon. So
all right, Christelle.
Create this community response to GBV where the teacher.
All right, you're doing all of that to put an end to the sufferings of the women and the girls in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, but you will agree with me that the ultimate solution will be an end to the armed conflict in those two regions. And you are in the United Kingdom gaining knowledge in conflict resolution at the master's level. In your opinion, what can be done to put an end to the armed conflict in the northwest and southwest regions today?
We assume that violence in the like military. For me, the conflict didn't only get violent in 2017. There has been militarism existing. Especially, we cannot even say that we were in peace before the conflict went violent, when there was continuous violence against women and girls. So there has been deep-seated militarism in our communities that, first of all, it will need to be handled before we can go now to all the political aspects of the crisis and everything. But I don't want us to assume that there was a peaceful before to a military after. That's the first thing. There was no peace because there has been violence against women and girls. Or the second thing I look at is the effective, like, the issues have different aspects. Maybe for the women, the war for them is violence on their bodies, is the war being fought on their body. That could be the point of the women. Just like the points of other people could be issues of political, of lack of political will to solve the problem. To other people, it could be bad faith. To other people, it could be greed. To other people, it could be whatsoever. People have their different views on how this thing could come about. But a proper solution entails bringing in these different factions, those different ideas, those different preferences, those different needs, priorities, and concerns, bringing them together to be able to address those needs and not leaving people behind or leaving some people, some ideas aside, especially women. That is why we come in with emphasizing on the implementation of United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 in Cameroon. And our approach to it is localizing the concept of peace with the understanding that peace means different things to different people, and it's more of an analytical category. And when we focus on one aspect of peace, or one aspect of, or think we can focus on one aspect of it, we leave out other fine aspects that form a very important basis of what the global picture or what the big picture of peace should look like. So all of those different things need to be taken into perspective before we can arrive at a real solution to the crisis.
All right, away from the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, what are some of the solutions that you are proposing to gender-based violence? What are some of the things that you think that can put an end to the violation of the rights of women and the girls in Cameroon today?
Okay, besides looking at institutionalizing issues that support equality, Hofna we don't only sit to wait for laws to be implemented. So one of the things we've been doing in the past years is we build the income generating skills of women and support them with basic startup material so they can be able to have economic independence and work their way through violence. We also raise awareness on those acts of violence because most of them either are considered normal parts of growing up or normal in the society and they go unreported. So we also are struggling to establish a mechanism where cases of gender-based violence are not only reported, they're properly followed up on. So like creating a system which can sustain sustain reporting and follow-up of cases of GBV while changing mindsets of community members on what it entails and how knowingly or unknowingly we perpetrate acts of gender-based violence.
All right, Christelle B4, women's rights advocate, anti-gender-based violence crusader, executive director of Hope for the Needy Foundation, HOFNA, joining us from London. Thanks for being with us in this edition of the news on Équinoxe Television, Christelle.
Thank you very much, Babila, for having me, and thanks to the listeners for following up. And I hope that we all come together collectively to put an end to this pandemic within pandemics, which is gender-based violence against women and girls in our community.
All right, thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today's edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Équinoxe Television. Do have a nice weekend in the company of our programs. Goodbye.